So you are at a beautiful location. You take out your camera, take a shot, and send it to your friends. Then you realize that they aren't as impressed with the scene as you were when you took the shot. Today I'm going to show you how to craft a captivating landscape shot. When you get to your location, don't immediately take out your camera and take a shot. What I want you to do is to think of your scene in 3 layers. So you have your scene. Divide up the scene into 3 layers. Okay? The background, middle ground, and foreground. The background is whatever is farthest from you. So maybe it's mountains, clouds, sky, whatever it is that's the farthest from where you are. The foreground is whatever is closest to you. So maybe it's just sand or something. Maybe there's a tree. And the middle ground is the space that's in between. Maybe it's water. So the first thing that you should do when you get to your location is to visualize your scene in these 3 layers. Okay? Because see, the real world is all about depth. You are standing here, but you can see really far away, maybe to the mountain range, and then you have water, and then you whatever it is in the middle ground, and then you have the foreground. And we are trying to put that into a 2-dimensional scene. So by visualizing your scene in this way, you're going to bring in a sense of depth. Okay? But then don't take your shot yet. What I want you to do next is to identify a foreground element to place in the foreground. Okay? This is the magic. Maybe it's a rock or a plant or a bench with a couple sitting on it, or a person or a duck or some fallen leaves. Whatever it is, try to find a foreground element. Maybe in this case we have a couple sitting on a bench. What this does is it pivots people to the scene. Okay, we call this a point of interest, sometimes known as the center of interest. This is the thing that helps to make your picture captivating often, because this acts as a point of reference so that people can enjoy your scene almost as if they're enjoying it from the perspective of this thing, whether it's a person or something else, right? It provides that point of reference. If you think about the definition of captivating, that's what it is, right? You are able to bring people to your scene. You're able to pull them to your scene. You're captivating them to your scene. And so that's why it's important to try and find some sort of a foreground element to place in your scene. A lot of people don't do this. They just go to a beautiful location and they think if they just take a shot, it's going to be beautiful. But that's going to come out plain. You want to think of your shot in these 3 layers, so you bring in that sense of depth, and by having some sort of an element, a point of interest in the foreground, you can create a sense of it's how do I put it? It's basically you're giving them a perspective. You're giving them a way to imagine how this scene must have felt for this person or whatever it is that's over there. Okay? Now I know you're not always going to find something over there, but this is where you have to be a little bit creative. You know, there's a guy on Instagram that I know. He has these really beautiful pictures of these beach locations, and in every single one of his shots there's a starfish in the foreground. And I used to wonder, how is this guy able to find a starfish every time he shoots? And then one day I realized that it's the same starfish in every single shot. And that's when I knew that this guy is bringing a toy starfish. It's not a real starfish. He's bringing a prop with him when he shoots. But that's ingenious, right? It works. By putting in something in the scene, even if it's something that you place there, it changes the way the scene looks just because you are converting a 3D world to a 2D representation of it. Now, it doesn't have to be a concrete object like a rock or a flower or whatever, right? You can be creative here. It could be leaves from a tree that's hanging into the shot. If you're at a beach, it could be the receding waves. It could be the foam in the waves. That's your foreground element. Or it could be a puddle of water that's having some reflection. You can be creative, okay? So when you go to your scene, before you take your shot, scout around a little bit, walk around and see, okay, where can I take this shot from where I can have these 3 layers: background, middle ground, foreground. Most of the scenes will have these 3 layers. Sometimes you might not find all 3, sometimes you might just find 2. It's okay. Most of the times you will be able to visualize it in these 3 layers for landscape shots. Find your layers. Then remember the horizon lesson. If you have a really interesting background, a really nice burning sky, then you can lower your horizon a bit so that you have more of the sky. And if you don't have an exciting background, then you can keep it higher so you have less of that and more of the middle ground and foreground. Whatever it is, you're always going to have, or most of the time you're going to have these 3 layers. So once you identify your layers, once you figure out your horizon line, remember to keep it straight. And then you find your foreground element. Now take your shot, okay? And see the difference for yourself. It's going to make a huge difference. You know, sometimes in certain locations, you might not find a foreground element. You might not need a foreground element. Some locations work well just because, you know, they're just so gorgeous, or for whatever reason. This is not a hard and fast rule that you have to follow. This is a framework. This is a way of thinking about things. It makes it easy to create a rather ordinary scene into a captivating scene. And you know, it might not work all the time, but it's a tool in your toolbox that you can use, okay? Don't get stuck on this, but try to look for the foreground element. It really helps. Try to look for these layers. I always do that. Most of the time, most of my pictures have these elements in them. Some of them don't, and that's fine. That's photography. You're going to find those exceptions, okay? So there you go. This is a recipe to create a beautiful looking landscape shot, and you can use it when you go shoot landscapes. And I want you to practice. When you are able to go out, go to a location and practice framing your scene in this way and see for yourself what difference that makes. Okay? I'll see you in the next lesson.